Hi, you're through to the Select Podcast. I can't take your call at the moment, but leave a message. And remember, please keep them kind. Cheers.
Seriously? I can't believe I got your answering machine. This is Dorian. I haven't much time, but whatever you, Jared, and Morgan are doing down there with the ancient shiny thing, you need to get it done. You have His Eminence's attention and that of his associates. Not good. Call me. Take care, Slick.
You have tuned in for a Slick podcast. I'm here to seek the truth. Live from Scotland around the UK. The one and only Slick podcast. Enjoy the show. Can I ask important questions? No matter how bizarre the truth might be. Tune in for Slick Podcast. Keeping it real, keeping it groovy.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, or a very good day to you when and wherever you're listening from. And a very warm welcome to the show. I'm your host, Simon Laurie King. Firstly, my apologies for a lack of an episode lately, as this time of year I'm always busy cutting the firewood we need for the coming winter, and this year has been no different. It's a lot of initial preparation, and then 5 days of very hard work producing around 18 to 20 cubic metres of firewood and stacking that into the sheds. Added to this, the swallows have returned, as they always do, and consequently will want to nest in the roof of my wood sheds, so it's a race for me to get finished so they can move in and then remain undisturbed. I have recorded 2 interviews, one with friend of the show Jared Murphy, that was last week, and this one. Okay, cards on the table. This isn't UFOs or shadow people. This interview doesn't contain spirits or ghosts or anything that may resemble a human skin suit wearing demon. But, and here is the thing, this interview made me feel very uncomfortable because of the subject matter. Cancer has affected my immediate family as well as the extended. The truth be known, cancer and its life-destroying abilities scares the hell out of me. That being said, it's no good sticking my head in the sand. Let's talk about this. So, coming up on today's show, we will be discussing prostate cancer with Roland Proudlock from the charity he founded called Prostate Buddies. Now, this Scottish organisation provides support for those who have suffered or suffering prostate cancer, locally and further afield. You can chat to them on the phone or online at their website, prostatebuddiesdng.org.uk. Roland and his fellow buddies visit places of work or worship, town halls or assembly rooms, anywhere in fact that they can talk and be heard. Their continuing mission to spread the vital information that we all need to know about prostate cancer. And remember, this cancer may just afflict men initially, but the ramifications will absolutely encompass the whole family and the friends network. Of that, you can be completely sure. Now, regardless of my uncomfortableness, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Roland Proudlock to the show.
Thank you very much.
Let's get the ball rolling on this one. Roland, you've kindly agreed to come onto the show to talk about the organisation you set up called Prostate Buddies. Start off by telling me what initially led you to set this charity up and the charity's remit.
Well, we are a group of guys who have all had prostate cancer, and all of us had different experiences at the moment when we were told we had cancer. But the reason for me setting the charity up is that my experience of being told that I had cancer was devastating. It was frightening, worrying. I just thought life was coming to an end. I thought it was a death sentence. And from then on, it was difficult to take anything seriously because that big C word is very, very frightening. And that, for me, was the catalyst. That was the thing that helped to decide that something needed to be done, at least in Dumfries and Galloway, to provide a support group for men who needed to talk to someone who'd experienced prostate cancer and gone through all of the fear, after diagnosis, all the treatments, and then the recovery, and of course the side effects that can sometimes happen.
Could you define what prostate cancer is and the initial signs that would indicate that a problem may exist?
Well, prostate cancer is, first of all, it's the most common cancer among men in the UK. Let's just talk about the UK. 1 in 8 men in the UK will get prostate cancer in their lifetime. And that's a very stark statistic. Speaking about my own experience, I had no symptoms, none of the normal symptoms that people will quote to you of prostate cancer. So when I went to my doctor with a pain in my side, completely unrelated to prostate cancer or cancer at all, because the doctor and I didn't know what the pain was, and actually we still don't, even though I still have the pain 6 years after going to report it to my doctor. It made the doctor curious, and one of the things he did for the pain that I was suffering was to take blood tests. But the blood tests didn't identify what the pain in my side was, but the doctor said, I need to speak to you about something here. Your PSA is high, and the prostate-specific antigen reading, instead of being less than 0.1, it was actually over 7. So that was the first indication that something wasn't quite right. Your prostate's right in the middle of all your vital organs down in the gentleman's area. It's between the bladder and the penis, and it controls the urine flow, and it also creates the semen that helps us reproduce. But it's unfortunately, it's not spoken about by many people until we came along, and we actually talk a lot about it at length to anybody that's willing to listen, because we want men to be prostate aware and to be able to recognize when there's something not quite right going on down in their private parts down there. So it's a cancer that's quite slow growing, generally speaking. So if it's identified quite early, and early is a word that the medical profession use, it can be treated very successfully. I hold myself up as an example of that. I was caught early. The cancer hadn't gone outside my prostate, hadn't spread through the lymph nodes and to other parts of my body, such as my pelvis and my backbone and legs and so forth. Unfortunately, that does happen, but mainly to men who haven't identified the side effects, or not the side effects, but the symptoms, I should say, and haven't gone and done something about it. But I just want to repeat that I had no symptoms, and I will tell you what the symptoms are if you'd like to know.
Yes, I think you should.
Well, the symptoms can be numerous. For a start, the most common ones that are talked about by doctors is having to get up to go for a pee so many times during the night. It's quite common for a man to need to go to the toilet once during the night. But when it gets into multiples of that, 5 or 6 or 7 or more times a night needing to go, then that's a signal there's something not right there. Normal bladder control means that you would be able to last all of the night without having to go to the toilet, but once a night's not outstanding. The reason that then we talk about other symptoms is because they are various and they can present in different ways. There's no set pattern to the symptoms. Blood in the urine is another quite common one. Not being able to go to the toilet is another one as well. I had a friend who was at a wedding and was absolutely desperate to go to the toilet, went to the toilet and couldn't pee, but he knew he had a bladder full. And that was quite an emergency. That was leave the wedding now and go to A&E, and he had to get the pressure released on that. So that was frightening for him, and it can be for anybody that experiences it for the first time. When the prostate shuts down the canal between the bladder and the penis, then that's the effect you get, is not being able to go and pee. Another one is going for a pee, and then within 5 minutes you need another one. In other words, your bladder's not emptying properly, and the constant feeling that you need to pee, even when you go to the toilet and trying to, but not being able to produce any urine. Other things I believe are things like the lack of the ability to produce an erection. Other things are pain in the pelvis and in the legs and in the back. But I believe, because I'm not medically treated, I'm talking generally here, that these are things that generally present themselves if the cancer has spread outside the prostate. So, you know, the normal procedure would be to recognize the fact that your peeing habits are changed, you can't, or you're going too often, or you're getting up through the night too many times, and blood in the urine is a definite signal that something's not quite right, and there's something needing to be done there.
So the help and the support of Prostate Buddies, talk to me about that. What do you offer somebody who's been diagnosed or going through or has gotten over? Talk to me about that.
Well, what I want you to do is imagine for a moment that you or your listeners have just been told that they've got prostate cancer, and you quite rightly mentioned that it's a male thing. Ladies do have a prostate, but it's not as present, if you like, as a man's prostate. Transgender men, of course, who change their gender to women, they still have the prostate. So what we do is we offer to fill the gap between the medical profession and rumours and misconceptions about prostate cancer. In other words, if you imagine that yourself or any of the male listeners have fears about having prostate cancer, we are the people to speak to, because we have, as we say, we have been there, we have experienced the cancer itself. We've experienced, most of us, but not all of us. Some of the guys are quite calm and collected when they're told they have prostate cancer. But for me, it was terrifying. And so to be able to go and speak to somebody one-to-one, or in a group, or over the phone, or by email, we offer all those options to men who just need somebody to talk to. Our strapline for all our publicity now is, we need to talk. And we need to talk, especially men. Men are habitually their worst enemies. They will go out of their way to avoid a visit to the doctor, or even talking about something that's bothering them. And that can be the reason why prostate cancer isn't caught early, but only manifests itself when it's become secondary or even more developed cancer, when it's gone into other bones in the body. And believe me, that's something that we do not want to hear. What we know is that if a man, such as myself, and I give myself as an example, is fearful of what happens next, what's my prognosis? How long am I going to live? What will be the side effects of any treatment I'm offered? What treatment will I be offered? We can answer all of those questions, because the 13 of us have all had different levels of treatment, slightly different levels of cancer when it was diagnosed. And we can also talk about the people who provided treatment, and reassure men that if they do all the right things quickly and to the T that they're told by the medical profession, that they stand a very good chance of surviving the cancer and going on to live a full life.
Do you have exclusively men from Britain contacting the charity, or are you able, or have in the past, talked to other people around the world with their concerns and seeking help?
Well, bearing in mind that men are very reticent to speak to anybody, even when it's offered for free, and we reassure them that we are willing to talk to them. It's difficult to envisage that we'll get people from outside our area contacting us. Although I have to say that the first time our helpline telephone number rang was on a Sunday evening. It was just after Sunday dinner, and I was at home, and it was a gentleman phoning me from Bulgaria. He was a Scottish gentleman, but happened to be living and working in Bulgaria, and he'd got the number from his son. So I don't suppose we can class him as a foreign national, but nonetheless, our helpline is open to everyone. And if somebody from Cumbria or Ayrshire or Glasgow or Edinburgh and Lothian was to call us, we would certainly do everything we could help. We don't have boundaries. We are a charity. We want to help men of any nationality at any stage of their concerns. Even if they don't have prostate cancer, they should contact us and talk to us about what to look out for should they get the symptoms.
Prostate cancer, as I understand it, as we've discussed, is not always a death sentence. Having said that, it can be if the initial symptoms are ignored, as you've said, because of fear or pride. And if it is, so how deadly, in your experience, is pride or fear when dealing with prostate cancer?
Yeah, they come to our focus very often. When you're given all the checks and tests and treatments and x-rays and scans, etc., prior to being offered the treatment, some really quite scary statistics come along. I mean, I spoke to a nurse when I was pre-treatment at the hospital, and she said, well, yes, your score is 12 now, but she said, you're very fortunate because I spoke to a man whose reading was 3,000 this morning, and he is terminally, and there is no hope for him at all. And this is not meant to scare people, but I really want to emphasize that it's all down to the man initially to do something about any suspicion they have that they may have prostate cancer. But I just want to add in here, although it may not be answering your question directly, but there is no national screening for prostate cancer, and that is a bone of contention of mine that I constantly take the opportunity when I'm talking to anybody, politicians or journalists or anyone, to say it's high time that we had national screening, as ladies do for cervical screening and breast screening. That's automatic for them. But for men who reach 50, let's say, they should automatically be offered initially a blood test. And then if the PSA reading, as I mentioned earlier, is sufficiently high, they should be offered an MRI test to look and see if there are suspicious shadows in their prostate. So yes, it can be fatal, but we do two things at Prostate Buddies D&G. One of the things is we talk to men who are worried or potentially even terrified about their situation that they found themselves in. But the other thing that we do a great deal of, and we'll be doing an awful lot more of this year because of the fantastic funding we've received from local donations, is going out and about with a stand that we're going to take to agricultural shows, vintage vehicle rallies, classic car events, etc., ploughing matches, wherever we can go. We're going out. We're not waiting for men to come to us anymore. We've done enough of that, although we will continue to have our monthly meetings. But we're going to go out there and meet our target audience, men of 50 and over, who are most likely to have cancer themselves or know a man who does, because of the fact it's so common. So, as I said, there are two threads to what we do: reassuring and helping men through the process, right to the point of getting over the treatment and dealing with the side effects, if there are any, but also trying to educate people, make them prostate aware, as we call it, so that well in advance of getting prostate cancer, they can recognize the signs and get something done about it very quickly. Being treated early is vital. Being treated for secondary or more developed cancer is also vital, and it can be very successful. But nobody should put themselves through the more radical treatments just by ignoring the signs and thinking that the doctor's too busy to speak to them. Doctors are never too busy to speak to somebody who potentially has cancer. I have found that during COVID, from the moment the lockdown started in 2020, that people who suspect they have cancer are being treated much more quickly than before COVID, which is heartening considering the pressure that the NHS has been under.
So how then, this episode, I should imagine, I mean, I'm recording it, or we're recording it, you and I, and it's beginning to really concern me, not because I'm recognizing symptoms, Roland, but because it's making me paranoid. So if there's no screening program, if somebody believes, look, this is like really concerned me this episode, I've got no symptoms either, but I want to get tested. Is there some way they can get tested, or do they have to wait till they suspect they've got symptoms?
Well, and I'm going to apologize to the medical profession in advance here, because I have had several phone calls and emails in the last 2.5 years since we set this charity up, from men who say that they saw me on Facebook or on television being interviewed and took the lead and went to the doctor. And the doctor has said, well, if you don't have any symptoms, I'm not going to do a blood test. They claim that they can get false positives. And I've no doubt that that's true. However, a false positive that leads to an MRI scan that then proves that there is no shadow on the prostate surely is much better than someone not getting a blood test when they should have done, and then discovering 2 years down the road that they did have prostate cancer in the first place, which has then developed into something more serious. Now, I read recently that within about 5 years, a new MRI scan aimed directly at scanning prostates may well be introduced, at which point national screening could well be possible. But that leaves us 5 years from now till then. That's if it ever happens. Still, to make men aware of the fact that if they are 50 or over, that they are most at risk. Younger men don't tend to develop prostate cancer. There are exceptions. I spoke to a lady whose husband died at 46 because the prostate cancer had taken hold. But, if this makes men sit up and take notice, well, yes, so be it, because we're in a world where quite often you have to look after yourself. Nobody's going to come round the doors and say, bend over, I'm going to stick my finger up your backside and see if you've got an enlarged prostate. Men need to be motivated enough themselves to say, well, I need to take care of myself here. And that's what we actually are trying to do with this prostate awareness initiative that we're now working very hard on, especially this year when we're allowed to go out and about again after being locked down. We're trying to say to men, you are the master of your own destiny here. Whether you or not you have symptoms, when you turn 50, you should be going to the doctor and asking for a blood test. And if the doctor says, no, I will not do it, then the man could be aware of the fact that he's going to the toilet 5 or 6 times a night. And if that was the message that got to the doctor surely then is obliged to perform a blood test initially. And I just want to say that a moment ago I mentioned that digital rectal examination. Men will call it the finger up the bum. And let's talk about that for a moment. I have no qualms about bringing that up. I've had several of those digital rectal examinations in the last 6 years since I first suspected there might be something wrong. And to be quite honest with you, if that's the thing that puts men off going to the doctor and getting checked, they ought to think about the possible consequences of not going to the doctor and having that examination. It lasts for a few seconds. It's not a bit embarrassing. The doctor does it every day, male and female, and they're not concerned about doing that. So if men are concerned about having that examination and don't go to the doctor just for that reason, well, I'm sorry, they should take a good look at themselves and say, well, what's the alternative here? If I get prostate cancer and don't get it checked and it develops into something worse, then not only am I subjecting myself to that worse situation, but also my family, my wife, my partner, my children, my relatives, my friends, my workmates. Because when I was diagnosed with cancer, everybody that I knew and was close to me, my wife and my children and my workmates too, they all had to be told that I had cancer, because that's a completely different ball game at that point. Then you're in a situation where you need all the support you can get. But if the cancer was left to develop because it wasn't checked at all or even properly, then the man needs to take some of the responsibility. My approach to life is that my father died when he was very young. And it was something and completely unrelated to prostate cancer, I should add. But because of that and what my mum and my siblings went through along with me, it was dreadful. And so if I'm ill at all, if it's something I can't explain away or treat myself with an aspirin or paracetamol or something, I will go to the doctor. That's what they are there for. Doctors have naturally been very cautious over the last 2.5 years. 2 years since COVID hit. But in the case of something like the suspicion of cancer, they will make an exception. Something will be done about it. And of course, as we're now moving into more relaxed regime now, when doctors are more open to us, it's becoming more easy again for men to approach them. But this is not me lecturing, it's just saying, be aware of the fact that it's your body. You should know what's going on with it. But even if you don't have symptoms and you are 50 or more, go to the doctor, ask for that check, that prostate check. And if it means a digital rectal examination and a blood test initially, so be it. You get one chance at that. And if you miss it, then the consequences could be a lot worse. And I am so grateful that my young male doctor had a suspicion that there might be something going on in my prostate and kept me going back and back and back over a year and a half, more and more blood tests until my PSA had risen to the point where he said, right, okay, we need to do biopsies again, because the first set of biopsies missed the cancer. And the second set of biopsies caught it. They found it. And I'm so grateful that I included my doctor in my concerns, and he did everything within his power to help me get the treatment. And here I am now sitting talking to you, feeling absolutely brilliant in every sense. But, you know, the side effects of the treatment are things that people are scared of as well. They shouldn't be. You know, if you are told by your doctor, or of course more recently for me, the surgeon who did my prostatectomy, my prostate was removed, they can assure you that certain things in life will change, but then on the other hand, at least you're still alive to tell the tale. And that really has to be the heartwarming message right at the end of any conversation about prostate cancer and the treatment, is that what they're trying to do is to give you your life back and let you carry on living, regardless of any side effects that you might get from the treatment.
While you were talking about the examination that could be quite, and maybe people feel a bit indignant about, it reminded me of the saying, and it really, really does hammer at home, that pride goes before the fall. And in this case, I really do think it could cost you your life, being too proud to go to the doctor, being too proud to admit how young you are. And it's about time that you ask. But I still do find it concerning that it would be a possibility that the doctor may say, no, you don't need a test if there's nothing wrong. Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid to say that's true. I mean, I can recall several friends and colleagues from different walks of life who've got in touch to say, I followed your lead, I went to the doctor, but the doctor refused the blood test. I would say, and this is not me being a smart aleck, but I would say that if somebody's concerned enough to go to the doctor, they should say that they're concerned about having prostate cancer because they're getting up to pee too many times during the night. That gives the doctor the lead that something needs to be done, rather than refuse somebody a blood test. I don't subscribe to the idea that false positives are what they don't want. If you do get a false positive reading on your blood and they do an MRI and there's no cancer there, then that's much better, surely, than doing nothing at all about it and not doing a blood test. I don't subscribe to the idea that a doctor should be able to deny any man the reassurance of having a blood test done. And I will also say that while it's common for 1 in 8 men, white men, to get prostate cancer, it's more common for 1 in 4 coloured gentlemen to get prostate cancer. And if indeed a relative, an uncle or your father or a brother has had prostate cancer, the statistic is 1 in 5. So it becomes even more serious when you think about it that way. This is something not worth ignoring by any man, that none of your relatives may have had prostate cancer. And to my knowledge, none of my male relatives, my predecessors, had prostate cancer. I got it. I don't blame myself for it. It's nothing I did. I don't drink, I don't smoke, and have been pretty healthy most of my life. It can strike people who completely are in denial. They really don't want to think about having prostate cancer. But if one ignores something like this, the statistics I've just told you are genuine. They're prepared by Prostate Cancer UK. Those figures can be checked and verified. I could bore you with statistics. I'm not proposing to do that at all. But again, it's worth hammering home that if one is 50 or over, a conversation with the doctor should take place, and they should respect one's concerns.
How did or has cancer changed your outlook on life?
Yes, that's a good question. I like that. I've always been a pretty, what's the word, up person, always quite jovial and happy, enjoyed other people's company, lots of hobbies, and you're very, very proud father and papa, I should say. And so it was never an issue for me. Being diagnosed with cancer was a hammer blow, a real proper shock. And I honestly couldn't look at any of my relatives, friends, and workmates in the eye, because I was thinking, well, this might not be me next year. I might not be here, because it's possible to start to panic. But having gone through all the checks, treatments and scans and x-rays and so forth, and then the operation itself, and that was August 2018, so a good few years beyond there now. My attitude now is that life is for the living, and that every day should be lived to the full. If there's something you want to do, go and do it. Don't put it off, because you never know how long you have. And so I'm incredibly grateful, as I said, that my doctor spotted it, that I had one of the top surgeons in the UK remove my prostate, and that the follow-up, not treatment, because I had nothing after the surgery at all, but the follow-up observations being made by the medical profession are very reassuring. So I'm even more positive. That's the word I was struggling for a few minutes ago. Even more positive than I was before being diagnosed, because I know that I've been very, very lucky. And this is what I preach to guys all the time. Preaching is a bit too strong a word, but I certainly I'm a bit of an evangelist when it comes down to it, as are all my buddies in the group who've all had prostate cancer and the treatment, is that, go and get something done about it. Do something about it quickly. Get the treatments. Do everything you're told to do. Take advice from the medical profession, because you stand a good chance of coming out the other end of it and being able to take up all of the hobbies and enjoyable practices and other things that you never got round to after you've had your treatment.
You have people in a state that you have to talk them down, to calm them down. I'm guessing if it comes to the point, in other words, if they're diagnosed, not a survivor, a continuing survivor, as such as yourself and the other guys, have you like a specific way you talk these people down to ground them, to calm them down, and then to move forward to what they should do?
Yes. We, as a group, were very fortunate. When I set it up way back in June 2019, we were in touch with Macmillan and the local NHS, the oncology unit at the DGRI here in Dumfries. And we were also in contact with Prostate Scotland, who have helped us incredibly. They are a nationwide cancer charity who do great work. And they encouraged us to get in touch with Maggie's. Now, you'll be familiar with the Maggie's centres. These are centres based all over the world now, who offer a quiet, contemplative, relaxing place to go to be counselled by people who understand the fearfulness, the terror that people get into when they've been diagnosed with prostate cancer that might turn out to be fatal. They offered us, the original group of 5 buddies, to go up for training to understand what kind of counselling we could provide, bearing in mind that we're not medically trained in any way at all, none of us. And that training was vital to us. And I now continue that on with any new buddies that join the group, and have done since our original startup. And it's to, allow men to open up completely. But the way that we get men to understand that we want to hear what they've got to say is that we share our own stories with them first. We tell them about the fears that we had, all the treatments and tests that we had, and all the side effects that we went through. And because we're able to share our experiences with men, it helps them to understand that we've been there, and we completely empathize with the feelings that they are going through. Fortunately, we don't have so many men come to us who are going through more radical treatments, such as chemotherapy and radiotherapy and hormone treatments. But we do have some who come to our groups who are getting that because the cancer with them has gone beyond their prostate. And whatever we say to them, it's very candid, very open. We don't hold anything back. But one thing that we do is listen much more than we talk. Once we've shared our experience, our own experience, the journey that we've been on, it frees them up to tell us what they're feeling and ask all the questions that they want to ask. Again, we can't tell them the outcomes of medical treatments from a clinician's point of view, but we can totally empathize, to use that word again, with them in their situation. And I have to say to you that in my experience of all the meetings and telephone calls and one-to-ones I've had in coffee shops and in people's private homes, when they specify it, we're willing to do that too. I have to say to you that there has never been a single conversation or a meeting where any man has said, this isn't working for me. They all always get something out of it. It helps them to feel that they're not alone, and that because of our strap line and our publicity, we need to talk. It's true, we need to talk. We all need to talk, not just about prostate cancer, but about everything. But with men being the least likely to talk compared to ladies, we are disproving that now, because if you were a fly on the wall at one of our open meetings, whether we have 20 or 30 men all sitting talking, everything gets talked about, and that includes the lack of sexual performance, as well as changes in their metabolism, night sweats and all sorts of other strange things that can come along after the treatments, which in themselves may be a little alarming to an individual. But when that individual hears that 3 or 4 other people in the group are getting that as well, it suddenly makes it easier to take, because they know that somebody else has gone through that as well. The conversations with men who are terminal are few and far between. I would suggest that they probably don't feel that they can come and talk to us because they've been told that there's little or nothing can be done for them. But we would still say that they should come to our meetings. If it makes life, such as it is, a little easier, then we are willing to speak to them. We don't have any limits, and there's nobody that we would exclude from our meetings at all, regardless of the stage they are at in life or in the treatment or what they've been told about their potential for an ongoing life. We are there for everybody, and we want to be able to help people regardless of the situation they're in.
So obviously you have a responsibility to your family, not to think that you're brave, because it turns out that anybody thinks that when we're talking about prostate cancer is in fact being naive. But the family have an obligation towards us, our partners or our wives or our girlfriends, to look out for signs. If, let's say, I was getting up for more than 1 or 2 peas in the night, you need to go and get checked out. Would you agree with that?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. In fact, Simon, unfortunately, I would like to be able to turn the clock back about 2 weeks, because we ran an advertising campaign on West Sound Radio for 3 months from January till the end of March. And that was a lady speaking. In fact, my wife, she agreed to record the advert. And it was basically a lady telling any lady that was listening to West Sound to look after their man and be aware of their habits and things that were changing. And, you know, getting up through the night multiple times was one of them. And to encourage their man to go to the doctor if there was anything at all that was out of the ordinary. So we are well aware of that. We actually also have, since June 19, when we set up, we've been encouraging ladies to come along to our meetings. Since June 19, we've had one lady come, and she only lasted for 10 minutes before she realized she was in among a group of men who she'd never met before. And I think she was more uncomfortable than they were, because they were talking very openly about their situations and their, you know, their symptoms, etc. Interestingly, because you've mentioned it, as of the 27th of April, which is our next monthly meeting in Dumfries, there is a ladies group, prostate ladies, I've just called it. I don't know if that's appropriate. We'll meet in the same venue at the Baptist Church Centre in Dumfries, in a separate room where they can talk about their concerns, what they've been through, supporting their men who have had prostate cancer, and then the treatment, and then gone through the recovery, etc., etc. We're well aware of the fact that women are the vital part of this team, in as much as men will not admit to having blood in their urine sometimes. But if the partner, and that can be, of course, we have a gay man in our group as well, and his husband will be well aware of his habits, you know, the getting up to pee through the night, etc. Fortunately, he was treated a long time ago, so and he can look back and say he had the right treatment because he doesn't have any side effects of it. But so when we talk about partners, of course, we're talking about male partners as well as ladies, wives and partners. In that, anybody in close company or contact or partnership with a man who has a prostate should be aware of the fact that prostate cancer is a killer, and they should be equally as aware as the man himself.
Pride has no place when it comes to men's health, and really that is a really important message to get through to partners and wives and girlfriends, to get involved and to not take no for an answer.
Yes, absolutely right. You mentioned pride a few times. I just want to tell you a wee an aside, which is really important to know. I mentioned quite a bit earlier in the interview that I had several digital rectal examinations. When I meet men in the street or in the supermarket or at an event or anywhere at all, and they know that I've had prostate cancer, and they kind of sidle up to me a bit, and they're looking around them to see if anybody's listening. I know almost exactly what they're going to talk to me about, and almost certainly going to be prostate cancer. And they say they have an appointment to see the doctor about it. They haven't seen him yet, and then they get all shy and coy and red in the face about the finger up the bum, or the digital rectal examination, as doctors will call it, the DRE. And I, before they even say it, I'll say to them, if you're worried about the finger up your bottom, don't. It's nothing to be worried about. You're better to have that than cancer. And that kind of deflates their worries, because we've got over that hurdle. It's me that's brought it up. I've completely shot it out of the air. And so we can then get down to talking about the other matters regarding prostate cancer. Still on the subject of the DRE, though, I have a PowerPoint presentation that I do to Rotary clubs and probus groups and other groups as well, golf clubs, etc. When I'm invited along to those, it's not a doom and gloom presentation, but it does actually mention all the facts that need to be known. But generally, when the room's full of men, I notice very early on that none of them are making eye contact with me when I'm looking at them, at my audience. So one of the techniques that I use to get them listening is to say that, yes, it usually starts with a blood test and a finger up the bum. And in order to get them on my side and listening without being worried anymore, I usually say, I've had so many fingers up my bum, I'm starting to enjoy it now. That may not be true. I can tell you it is. I'm not really enjoying it. But it's nothing to worry about. But it does break down the fear barrier. That unspoken phrase, the finger up the bum, to me, I can understand why people are concerned about it. It's a very personal thing. It's being done by somebody that they don't know that intimately. But frankly, they've got a rubber glove on. They put gel on their finger. They're just feeling to see how large the prostate is. They're not trying to work out anything else. And they're probably, while they're doing that, thinking about what they're going to have for dinner that night. So it's to try to deflate that concern, that worry, that embarrassment that men have about that examination. That's my aim. So we get that out of the way, and then we get down to the real interesting stuff. Again, when I'm doing that talk, I talk about my own experience. I share it, and I can feel that about 2/3 of the way through that they're all making eye contact, that they're paying much more attention. And I have to say that quite often I'm contacted by people who've been at these talks, and they've actually gone to the doctor and been checked over, and they're delighted to say that they've had a blood test and they're clear. Well, that's the best news I can get. Occasionally, they've had a reading that says that there's something there that needs to be investigated. Well, so be it. That's good also, because hopefully, fingers crossed, I've spoken to them at the point in their lives when the cancer's just begun to develop and it's been caught early. And again, our experience is that if men are caught early and treated early, then the cancer hasn't gone outside the prostate, which, by the way, is the size of a walnut. It's very, very small. They can get on with their lives, and they can plan to enjoy holidays and all the other experiences that people look forward to in the hope that they live a very long time.
Are you finding lots of people lending their support? I can think of a friend of mine that I think it was 2 years ago, he ran marathon after marathon because unfortunately he lost his father through prostate. You finding
I know who you're talking about,
but we'll not mention his name.
No,
but you know, that's dedication for you. A really good guy. Are you finding that across the board where people just go above and beyond to support your cause?
Yes, I will say that I have a fantastic treasurer. I'll mention his name, Andrew Edgar. Andrew and I were both treated for prostate cancer in the same year, 2018, and we both were within a few months of each other of having our prostates removed. Andrew and I talk nearly every day, and we almost have to talk every day, even though he's working very hard and I am too, full time still. And most of the reasons we're talking is because another person or another company or organization has come forward and say they want to donate money to our cause. The support we've had from people since we set up has been phenomenal. And the really good thing about all of that is that we haven't had to, not been forced to, go and run any fundraising events. And I tell my buddies that the priority for them must be to talk to other men, just talking to other men who are already diagnosed with or are worried about possibly having prostate cancer or have had the treatment and are struggling to recover properly, and not worry about where the money is coming from to keep the charity going. It is expensive to run any kind of charity, I'm sure, and we have our expenses. But the fantastic thing is that the support we've had has been much more in excess of what I would ever have expected. But to come back to the statistics, if we consider that 1 in 8 men in their lifetime will get prostate cancer, I know, because I'm told, that a great deal of the support comes to us from people who themselves have had prostate cancer, have had colleagues or relatives who've had prostate cancer, and they want to do their bit. They just want to do what they can. They can't offer anything other than money. They donate money to us. And that means that our charity can continue apace. We don't scrimp on costs of advertising or literature because it's all vital to what we do. So the support that we get from people is incredible. If I can give you a quick one. Last summer, 2021, 2 gentlemen, Ian Hunt and Mark Baird from Southern S, did a cycle run over 1,000 miles in 1 week and raised just over £9,000. And they presented us with just over, half of that money, and the other half went to another charity. And that allowed us to put an advert on television to let people see what our meetings look like, because we had a film made of our meeting in Dumfries. And it was designed to let men know that our meetings aren't clinical, they're not scary, it's not like Alcoholics Anonymous or anything medical. It's groups of guys sitting around at tables, chatting over a coffee or a tea with a biscuit about their concerns. And we wouldn't have been able to do that without those 2 guys stepping up. So it was fantastic that they did do that. But dozens and dozens of people, individuals, groups, organizations, companies, they come forward all the time. Currently, we're being sponsored for our West Sound advert by the Scottish Caravan Club Dumfries Centre, or Dumfries and Galloway Centre. But we've been supported by Dumfries Rotary Club of Dumfries. We've had the Lions Club. We've had Dingbro, the motor parts suppliers, all sorts of walks of life coming forward and saying, we have raised this money for you. Even we generally don't know we're getting the money until it's actually been raised. Occasionally we'll get involved with incentives or events, but generally people are coming to us and saying, we want to support you, you're doing a great job. But in the background, even though we don't often ask what the backstory is, it's quite often because their father or a colleague, a relative, a friend has had prostate cancer, and they just feel that that this is a big cancer to support and a charity to support, and we want to repay them by doing the best that we can.
That's at the top of the hour, Roland, and I've appreciated the time you've given us today. I'll remind everybody that the SLK podcast website is now up and running, and Prostate Buddies is right at the front. Click on the link, you'll go to Prostate Buddies site, and I encourage you to read and see what the guys do and help if you can. Before we wrap up, remind us where we can find and get in touch with Prostate Buddies and how we can also help.
Well, you can help by encouraging men to be aware of the fact that we exist. We exist. We're a voluntary group to help men either get over their diagnosis, get through the treatment, or indeed get checked before they're even diagnosed with prostate cancer. We have a website, which is Prostate Buddies, DANDG.org. We also have a fantastic Facebook page, which we almost every day we put a new post on telling people about something that's happening, something coming up. And then on both of those sites, you will find our hotline number, which is a telephone number to ring between 9 a.m. and 12 midnight to get a one-to-one conversation. And that would be with me, because we have the one line running now instead of 5. We found that the line isn't that much in demand, but it's still in demand, still being used, and it's switched on 7 days a week. So those are the ways people can speak to us. But the other way, of course, is that on the last Wednesday of every month, we meet at the Dumfries Baptist Church Centre at Gilbray in Dumfries. It's a lovely setting. It's a fantastic venue. The room is big and roomy enough, and we can all have fairly quiet conversations without having to shout. And it's very, very rewarding to know that men will come to our meetings feeling very timid and shy and not sure they should be there, but they're patting us on the back saying how good it's been and they're going to keep coming back again. It's just a wonderful thing and very, very rewarding. It's exhausting, but so be it. We want to be there for men if they will only take that first step and come to us.
Roland Proudlock, thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
And that was the Prostate Buddies interview with Roland Proudlock. This is a conversation that needed to be had. A subject that needed to be addressed and talked about. Uncomfortable? Yes, of course, but any subject that is of a nature that threatens our mortality usually is, right? For confidential one-to-one support and for information about prostate cancer, either for yourself or someone you know that you think might benefit, and I promise you they would do, husband, boyfriend, brother, father, fill in the blank. Contact Prostate Buddies at www.prostatebuddiesdng.org.uk. When it comes to cancer, let pride have no place in your heart or your mind when approaching this deadly subject. It does affect us all. My thanks to Roland for his time today, and my thanks to you, my dear listener, for attending this cast, as well as thank you for your patience. You can find the Slick Podcast at our new Virgin website, theslkpodcast.com. There you can catch up all the latest episodes and past also. Our site is very much a work in progress, and my thanks to Carl from Stalybridge Web Design for his excellent work and continued support. You can check them out at Stalybridge Web Design on Facebook. Check them out for yourself. I'm still working on the finishing touches to the merchandise, which will be on the online shop on our new website. Once online, you will be able to pick up our exclusive merchandise. I must tell you though, a bit of a warning. The hoodies and t-shirts, baseball caps, mugs, etc. are absolutely, definitely not going to make you fit in. That is a big nope. Quite the opposite, in fact. The motifs, style and quality will absolutely set you apart. If you enjoyed the show, give it a like and consider subscribing also if you be so kind. Leave a comment below or rating, or send the show an email, theslkpodcast@gmail.com. It'll be great to hear from you. But either way, please, keep them kind. You can find the show on all the usual podcast platforms, including Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. And so, my friends, it's time for me to go. Until next time, stay safe, be happy, and certainly not afraid. Bye.
Slick Podcast. Keeping it real and always keeping it groovy.